Just like every other podcast. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the DT show. Hope everybody's having a great night, great evening. Today we have a show for you, an excellent show. I have retired CSI investigator Steve from a True Crime Web going to be joining us here soon. We're going to be going over some of the pictures and the crime scene photos in the Bryan Kohberger case. Mainly just some of the splatter and stuff. We're not going to go too graphic on it, but we are going to look at some of the things that are present and talk about Bryan Kohberger and how maybe perhaps he was able to elude some of the things he was able to allude to that not have DNA in his vehicle. Before we start, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, ring that notification bell. You guys know what to do. Without further ado, let's bring in Steve from True Crime Web. How's it going, my man? It's been a while. How you doing?
I'm doing fine, sir. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here and looking forward to tonight's show.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You know, when these crime scene photos drop, you're the first person I thought of. I was like, I don't understand what I'm looking at when it comes to blood splatter and things like that. I mean, to a certain extent, I do, but not to anywhere near the level of yourself. And I was like, in order for us to understand these things, I got to get somebody who knows their stuff when it comes to this type of information. And so none better than I thought of you. Have you had I know you saw the video, but have you had an opportunity to go through the crime scene photos?
After your invite the other day, I went back to one of your shows and watched, I think it was a show from Saturday, and looked at those and saw some very interesting details and patterns from the bloodstain pattern analysis that very interesting.
Yeah, I thought so too, and I thought no better than yourself. Now, before we get into it, a little bit of background. Bryan Kohberger was studying maybe not necessarily crime scene investigation forensics, but he was in the criminal justice class. He had gone to in DeSales University, went to the murder house, is what they called it out there, which is a crime scene, and wrote some articles on or not some articles, but he wrote a paper on crime scene logs and how to investigate a crime scene. He doesn't have any DNA in his car. Your first thoughts about that? Were you surprised when that first happened that there was nothing found in the car?
Absolutely. And of course, knowing his background, and now that we know that he is the offender and has confessed to it, it leads one to only obvious conclusion is that he prepped his vehicle and himself to minimize and defeat those transfers.
I agree. And, we talked a little bit before, and you mentioned a certain thing that he would have known giving his investigation. Can you describe what that is for us?
Of course. The basis of all CSI and investigation, one of the biggest things that we learn in the early stages of crime scene investigations as a crime scene investigator is a certain principle that is called Locard's exchange principle. It simply means that every contact that between two items, doesn't matter if it's a hand, a person, a shoe, elbow, clothing, fibers, from that, whenever you go into a new environment, you take something from your environment and you deposit it, and you pick up something from the environment that you're in and you take back with you. And that's the Locard's exchange principle. And it is magnified if there's any type of physical contact, such as struggles and things, that those things are going to happen and occur in a crime scene. And it's very exciting for, looking at from the context of CSI, that we're in these crime scenes and we're looking for those key points, golden eggs, things that's going to link that offender to the crime scene and link the crime scene to the offender's home environment. And that's the value of Locard's principle. And with his background, he would have crossed that and understood that principle.
Yeah, I 100% agree. You told me about this, and then I was like, you know what? Let's bring up what it is that Bryan Kohberger spoke about. And I have one of his documents here, and this is his crime scene scenario final. This is dated back in May 5th of 2020, and this is for Professor Dave Sipe. And the first thing it says is the first thing first thing to be done is to block off the crime scene in order to avoid a crime scene contamination. The second block theory, or the second block, then goes into it and says the theory of transfer states we bring something with us to the crime scene and take something away, thus skewing the crime scene from the original slate by contamination. Basically, what you were just saying right now. That's one of the very first bullet points of something that he considered when arriving at a crime scene as an investigator. And so I thought when you told me that and I read this first and foremost, I was like, well, I think Steve will appreciate his understanding of what Bryan Kohberger knew, because it seems like you're spot on.
Yeah. Well, and he wrote this with to the instructor reading it from the context of a responding law enforcement officer, but there's no difference from the responding of an offender to a crime scene.
That's true. That is true. And some of the things that he really is, keyed on is cross-contamination. And he goes into this saying, I must ensure myself and my fellow crime scene personnel are wearing gloves and other protective equipment as to avoid contaminating the scene with latent fingerprints. A fiber-free boot cover would also be ideal to avoid leaving physical footprints or residue from the boot. Anything that is fiber-free and covers the mouth, hair, and overall body would be helpful to avoid crime scene contamination, such as hair, saliva, skin cells, and other bodily fluids in the cells be added to the scene, thus contaminating it. Fibers can be left via the theory of exchange and would contaminate the crime scene from its initial state as the offender left it. Even if we can assume that there was an offender, despite seeming obvious, preventing contamination is an important way to ensure integrity of the crime scene and evidence. I mean, he's kind of covering almost everything you've said: fibers, fluids, the whole nine yards. But what I found interesting is the type of clothing that he's talking about. How helpful is this type of clothing when it comes to, because this is to avoid contaminating a crime scene. He's going in there trying to commit a murder. How much help does this help him wearing these type of clothing?
Yeah, there's no difference between Tyvek and some type of coveralls that you can buy at your big box stores. And especially if you're just going to throw them away or dispose of them, hide them, put them somewhere as a keepsake, whatever. There's no difference between the coveralls and the Tyveks, especially with headgear, mask, everything that he put in there matches the description of what he was preparing to do and what the witness observed.
Yeah, he definitely is. And to me, I just feel that obviously there was no DNA left in the car. He had 7 weeks to clean it. In fact, when they found the vehicle, they found a bucket of cleaning solution next to it. And he was actively still cleaning his vehicle. They saw that it was clean in areas that normally weren't. They took the car apart. And I noticed in a video when he got pulled over back in August that his vehicle wasn't as clean. I mean, it looked clean, but you could see dust in areas you would expect to see dust. For them to not find dust in areas they would expect to see dust is telling to me of how much he probably cleaned that scene. But four kids lost their lives, 4 beautiful souls. And it appears only one knife. There's possibly a second weapon. We don't know. I'm going to look at some pictures, and I want to ask you if you can maybe perhaps identify that possibility. But, close contact with a knife, a lot of these things, it's kind of difficult to believe that he didn't take anything, but he must have planned this very, very well. Now, this is, I believe, I think this one's in Maddie's room. No, this one's in Xana's room, I think, because of the rug. To me, this looks like just he was standing there and was dripping. What do you see when you see this?
Well, we don't have a scale included in this to tell what size these blood droplets are. And of course, that would be very helpful. If you will note that normally in blood drips, that surface tension of a blood drop that's falling from something, those blood drops, just like dripping from a faucet, they get to a certain volume and they break away. And if you have any type of injury, of course, you would have that. Or if you have some knife or any weapon, or even your hands or gloved hands are saturated with any type of blood, it will accumulate and it will break away at a surface tension. There's some of these blood droplets that are smaller than others, if you zoom in there. Therefore, we have some force that not only is someone in this vicinity, but there's force almost as if he's shaking his hand or casting off some blood. They're all, you can't really see any, they look pretty symmetrical as being circles, so it's almost 90 degrees. But with those small droplets in there and those not being satellites, that there's some force, almost like I said, as if he was shaking his hand or the knife downward that created the 90 degrees. But there's some energy put onto those blood droplets to create those smaller droplets.
Now I see this one, and this one. They look like the center is missing out of these droplets. Is that something? Anything?
Now, well, it can be if it's expirated blood, such as from the nose or mouth, coughed up, that you'll see that characteristic in some of it, and that could also account for some of those smaller droplets. Although, like I said, we don't have them to scale, so there's some unclarity exactly of how they were formed, but sometimes expirated bloods will have those voids or little bubbles in the center.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Steve, can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm in a hotel. I'm on the road, and
it's all good.
In and out occasionally. I'm sorry.
No problem. No problem. You just kind of disappeared halfway through your sentence there, but I had asked. I was like, look, so this scene here is obviously very gruesome. A lot more looks like a lot more force happening here.
Yes.
Xana, it's been indicated that Xana had fought, and there was a heck of a battle that happened down there. Is that what you see here? You see, is this what is happening when somebody's fighting back? You see this type of.
Well, that wherever the blood source is, if the victim's not there when we enter in as a CSI, we see this pooling of blood, but there's not a victim in either laying next to those pools or is several feet away from these pools. We know at some point the victim who had substantial injuries was in that vicinity, and those pools came from injuries and pooled there and through transfers. And we also see that there's transfers onto the bed clothing, which is extremely interesting. And from the standpoint of CSI, what we see on that bed clothing, if that victim has the ability to move and contaminate the bed clothing, they also have the ability that you'll see similar type of stains on the offender, such as Kohberger, for the fact that if they're putting hands or arms or body parts on that bed clothing, creating those transfer stains, they're also doing it to the offender if they're capable of fighting him off, grabbing him, regardless if they're facing him or away from him, because it's natural instinct to reach for and fight off your offender.
Yeah, that's what I was, one of the things that I was thinking, I mean, he must have been saturated in this. The type of clothing that he was reading off, is that the type of, like, would blood still soak through that onto his skin?
Oh, probably not through. Now, there's possible, I mean, if the victim ever was, say, directly over him, you would have a large, or if he was rolled over into one of these pools, there could be a great amount of saturation that could have got to his skin in certain openings, on his clothing. It just depends on how he prepared himself. Did he tape up his around the cuffs of his jumper to his gloves? Don't know. But if he did, then of course he's minimizing some of the of getting to him. His headgear, mask would once again minimize any blood transfer to his skins. But there is most definitely, I believe that there was a large amount of blood transfer just from that bedding. That if that victim moved through that crime scene and was able to put that transfer to that bedding, I think there's a high likelihood they also transferred to him.
How loud? Are you expecting this to be a loud situation?
It depends. There's a lot of things that can happen. Some people are very vocal during confrontations. Some people are not. And you never know which side it's going to be. I've seen struggles that, whereas, where people are fighting, you pull up and all you hear are the blows from one to the other. And then you have some fights where it's screaming. It is very random. You just never know. It would have to be the characteristics of behaviors of certain individuals, how they face it. Threats.
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, everybody's different. That's for sure.
But it's odd that we have 4 victims, and none of those 4 victims, from I'm made aware of, that were screamers or ones that are very vocal. Now, 2 or 3 of them may have been taken by surprise and received injuries that did not allow that. And we just don't know the which injuries were inflicted or how surprised each victim was.
That's true. I think that for sure we know that from the sounds of it, it sounds that Maddie was asleep. Kaylee may have woken up during the middle of it. It sounds like Xana was attacked while awake. And from all assumptions and from what it appears at, and from what's been reported, is that Xana was attacked first in the room, and then Ethan, but that Ethan didn't wake up throughout they don't believe that Ethan woke up throughout that attack. Now, they've been consuming alcohol throughout majority of the day. We found out through some of the docuseries and the books that these young ladies and Ethan, they all started drinking around 9 in the morning, 10 in the morning, when they were getting ready for the day. They were having champagne and a bunch of other things throughout the day, pre-gaming for the football game and drinking throughout the night. So by the time they got to their home late in the evening, and you can see from the house that they had partied there that day, there was a lot of alcohol that they have consumed. So I strongly suspect that at least 2, if not 3. I know they say that Kaylee may have woken up, and we're going to look at some images, but I think that she may have slept through some of it as well. I just think that it was completely horrific. I think Xana may have been the only one awake. Now, this one's back still in Xana's room, and you have, this is smeared, right? This is like her grabbing it, or is this like maybe them walking through it? How do you explain this type of?
Well, we don't, like I said, we don't have images of the victim, and so we don't know if this is transfers from the victim in these pools of blood, or from injuries that are swiping against these surfaces, creating a certain transfer. Or is this from the offender who may also, in the throes of battle, been off balance, fell to the floor, and transfers it himself? We just don't know. If we had some pictures of, like I said, each of these images is a frozen moment in time. Whatever the shutter speed of the camera is, that's all we're catching here. And so, how many pictures you got? You just got these very brief moment glimpses of the crime scene. Now, there's going to be hundreds, if not thousands or so pictures of the crime scene that we'll have a better understanding. And if we saw the victims and what transfers and what injuries they had on the person, we would be able wouldn't have to speculate so much about how some of those transfers occurred.
That's true. Going back to this image, I wanted to ask you before we froze, is it possible that he was cleaning the weapon, and that's what, the force you were mentioning?
It could be, like I said, and like I said, that it doesn't mean, because we have 2 different, we have a separation of the blood droplets. We have 4 that's almost in a semicircle from 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock on the left, go to the left.
Oh, these.
Yes, you almost have like almost a side swipe of all those droplets appear to be almost similar size. And that could be somewhere just flick of a hand or flick of a knife that would create those 4 similar droplets in size. And then they may be in a different time frame than what these other droplets that you see on the right side. There's no, while we can guess that they may be in a certain time frame doesn't mean they all happened at the exact moment, at the same time.
Understood. That makes sense. Thank you, GSUPM, saying $10. Thank you, Daniel and Steve. We appreciate you. Birdie comes in with a 99-cent super sticker. Thank you. Mikey, educate and appreciate this. Thank you so much, Mikey. Good to see you. And D Fuentes gives 2 Drunk Turkey Show memberships. We appreciate you guys. So this picture here, this one, a lot of assumptions here that this is Kaylee's bed, Maddie's bedroom, and Kaylee was here. There's been some discussion that Kaylee may have been in the corner. Do you see that based on the way this corner looks?
We have 2 things that could have occurred there. I don't know if that's expirated blood coughing from a person that is facing the wall and coughs up from either some type of blood, or if it's some type of projected blood from arterial spurt. I can't really tell because it doesn't appear that typically with arterial, you'll have a semi-curve of the blood pressure, and it'll be elongated and solid. That's not real good. It's pixelated. I can't really see in there, but it also could be just expirated blood with some, or expirated along with other types of cast off.
Yeah, I mean, it's coming out.
Some of these over here are cast off. You can see those. The one up there that you just had the arrow on top, you see that elliptical elongated shape with that satellite, which came from a very low angle that was cast off either by the victim struggling and putting their hand in that direction, or from the offender on the back, when he was possibly bringing his hand back with enough force to cast off that blood droplet.
If somebody was laying here, we'd have to, I don't want to kind of picture this, but we have to assume that, the offender's head is facing towards the pillow while he's doing the attack. Can you tell based off of this cast off if he used his left arm? If you were there and you had a full understanding of the crime scene and you have certain voids on the sheet, you would almost be able to tell certain where he may have been, because it'll cause what is like a shadow effect of where he would be when some of these injuries occurred, because blood won't. It's right the opposite of creating voids. Because if his body, his knees, his body, his chest, his arms are in the way of blood spatter, of course, you'll have these voids. And, I hate to just speculate exactly what the angle was, because this blood droplet could be 90 degrees to it. It could be that that his shoulder is less than a foot or 2 away from that light switch. To that, if he's 90 degrees, he could be 3 or 4 feet away from and 90 degrees away from that light switch. Across the angle versus, he's at a 180 degrees versus 90. And these droplets that you see on the blanket, what does that tell you?
Well, we know that the victim was there for some amount of time, because there's an extreme amount of loss of blood, and there's something that occurred there, either by the victim being in that position and some movement either through the offender, who is causing multiple strikes and is splashing and casting off blood and creating these blood stains, because you can have different types of spatters caused by impacts. That if someone has an injury and you've created that injury and there's blood flowing from it and you smack it, just like you go in there and get your hands and you have water, and when you slap it, droplets go everywhere. Same thing with any type of impact. Doesn't matter if it's from a fist or a hand, a fist around a knife. When you have those high impact things, you can have cast off. And then, of course, those larger blood droplets are that whatever was saturated with blood had to be in those areas to create that type of blood stain.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean it's bad.
Oh yes, I've seen it. I mean, you know, when you go into those scenes, it's not for the faint of heart.
It's not. It's not. I feel so bad. I mean, I feel horrible. This is Kaylee's room. Now, I wanted to ask you this because there's been a bit of a question mark on whose was the target, whose door went in first. Now, based on some documents that have come out, one of the documents being a warrant for TikTok for Xana Kernodle, it stated that she was on TikTok until 4:16 a.m. That came in about April 2023, so after the PCA. So I'm assuming the PCA information was preliminary information off of the phone, not the exact information off of TikTok. And so that kind of made some sense to me. You know, that told me that, also we found out in the documents that Dylan heard who she thought was Kaylee going up the stairs before running back down the stairs, saying somebody is here. And when she did that, she was running up the stairs with Murphy and then running back down. We've also found out that Murphy, the dog that was barking at about 4:17, may have been Murphy. They don't know for sure, obviously. But Murphy, according to witnesses from the neighborhood, this is also from another document, Murphy was the only dog in the area. And 2, it was freezing and it was in the middle of the night. So I don't think anybody left their dog outside that long. And just for only the few moments that this crime had occurred. And 3, Murphy had access because Kaylee's bedroom door was left open, and so was the back sliding glass door, so he could have run in and out. But he starts barking at 4:17. The altercation happens at 4:17. So that told me that Murphy most likely interrupted Xana off of her TikTok at 4:16, and that she goes back, takes up Murphy up the stairs. Bryan Kohberger is probably waiting up there, encounters him. I think that there is an encounter. I don't think he strikes her or there's a physical encounter there. I think she turns around. I think maybe they see something and say someone's here. And the reason I believe that is because Murphy didn't run with Xana to Ethan. Murphy ran out the door. And so something told me that something spooked them both. And so, with that being said, to me, I thought, well, if that's to be the case, I think that he would have gone into Maddie's room first and then into Kaylee's room, because had he gone into Kaylee's room first, he was inside that house around 4:08. I don't think it's going to take 8 minutes for that interruption of Xana's TikToking to occur. I think that interruption occurs a lot sooner. So I thought to myself, well, maybe perhaps he went into Maddie's room first, opened Kaylee's room to see who's in there. Murphy runs out, runs down to Xana's room. She gets up. He waits upstairs to see who's going to come up. There's that interaction at the stairway. She runs out or runs to Ethan. He runs behind her. But when I look at this doorknob and I think about the amount of blood that we just saw in Maddie's room, how does one open the door like this without having blood all over it?
Well, and once again, though, we are assuming that when the door was open, that the dog instantly ran downstairs. But what if Kohberger opened the door first, and if he'd been in the house before or not, regardless, but the dog was curious and wanted to go, and when he opened the other door and the assault occurred, because we don't know how long did the dog spend upstairs. He may have went over to the other room with him and became frightened during the assault, then run downstairs. Don't know. But I can see that you have a great point that if he committed those first 2 assaults upstairs and then opened the door, I'm like you, I would expect to see blood. But if he opened the door first, probably not. And, we can speculate on what the dog's reactions were when the door was open. Did he stay with a Kohberger and was a witness to the crime and then went to get help in a frightened state downstairs? Who knows? Or went just to escape the violence? You just never know.
No, I know. I agree with you. I'm just because I thought at first maybe perhaps Kaylee was the target. He opened the door. That's how Murphy gets down. from there.
And I would agree that if he opened that door first and understanding surveillance, and because you can tell when people come home, if you put somebody on surveillance long enough, I can just about tell you from the training I've had and from the times I've spent outside residences watching prior to doing any type of search warrants or doing some entries, that we would put that residence under surveillance, and it doesn't take a lot of time to see the when someone enters a door and then you watch and see a light come on, that you can tell from the time someone enters a house to what room they go, that they progress to, and what lights are turned on, that you can pretty well have a good understanding of who sleeps where and their habits. I mean, did he do that? It's possible.
Yeah. Well, to me, I felt like it'd be very difficult for him to have known that Kaylee was the person that was in Maddie's room. That could have very well been Dylan, Bethany, Emily. Yes. It could have been a friend of Maddie's from outside of the house. So, to me, I think I know there were some objectives that he had to overcome, such as the white Elantra parked outside, Ethan being there, those type of things. And he's done surveillance. Ethan was a normal at the house, so he would have known that Ethan would have been there. And yet he still made entry. But I find it weird or hard to believe that if he would have opened up this door and saw a dog inside, even if he's had surveillance and had interactions with this dog before, that he's just going to leave the door open with the dog there and hope that the dog don't run up behind him, don't run downstairs and alert somebody else, and somebody else comes up behind him. You get what I'm saying? So,
yes, I understand. If the dog was over there, I don't know if the dog wasn't in the other room.
Well, according to Bethany, in one of the statements, she said that the dog often stayed in Kaylee's room, and that it sounds like at some point Kaylee was in bed. I would assume that maybe she went to go lay down at one point, but by 3 o'clock in the morning or 2 something in the morning, she's in Maddie's room making those phone calls that she's going to bed there. But at some point she did go to bed in her room because it appeared that her covers had moved. Now, her body was found underneath the blanket, and there were stab wounds through those things. The chief came out and spoke about that, the current chief of Moscow. And so he basically said that they 100% believe that she was asleep in the room when the attack occurred. She didn't walk into it. And so to me, I find that I think that there's a good possibility that the dog probably heard what was going on, was at the door, pacing, like kind of nervous. And then when the door opens, he bolts out. But you're absolutely correct. He could have been in there for a lot longer. One of the MOs that I think we can kind of see with Bryan Kohberger is that he don't touch doors very much. He touches them once. And this goes back to the American Tragedy in Idaho 4, the American Tragedy book that just came out with James Patterson. They talked about other burglaries that Bryan Kohberger committed throughout his youth. He was he'd been burglarizing homes since he was a kid, and he had stolen about $30,000 worth of coins from one of his friends' dads. And basically, he would go play hide and seek in the woods with his friends. His friends go off and hide. He'd go into the house and steal some stuff and then leave. And he would leave the doors open there as well. All of the doors where the decedents were found, according to the court documents, were left open, including the back sliding glass door. And so Kaylee's room was left open. I think that that's some correlation that was Bryan Kohberger that opened that door.
Yeah, and I can't argue the point against you. I mean, that's just as reasonable as any explanation, because if that was his MO of other crimes, then of course he may have been checking, is there another party in the house other than what he's already or who he knows is in the house.
Well, whether he tried to open this door first or second, that tells me there was more than one target.
And also we have to, and I have to agree that with you that it would be odd, and I'd have to see the crime scene itself. And then I would probably be able to have a better understanding from the crime scene and the two assaults that occurred in that room, or the two victims in that one room. How violent was it? How much transfer was there of blood? And that would tell me, is the door open as he passed back through?
Interesting.
Or the fact that if he is saturated with blood, how would he be able, like you said, how would he be able to open that door?
Well, this door has blood here.
Yes.
And this is the one, I believe, where the droplets, we can see them here.
Okay.
And so we do have
those, looking at those, can you zoom in on them? Do they have any, are they elliptical, or the ones up on the door itself? And more than likely that would occur with the door being open.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with the door being open aspect. And they look kind of teardropped. Like this one, like kind of a teardrop.
Yeah, and they're kind of trailing from 12 to 5.
Yeah. I would agree with that. And I think there's some more right here. Maybe. It could be the grain. But this is the drops that we were looking at in the first picture.
Okay.
I mean, you got a boot in the corner there. I don't know if that, they're drops. And I think this is the blanket that, I mean, you have some drops here, even here. So if you have drops on this side of the mattress and the victims are on this side, that's not from them coughing. That's from something happening here, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, you can also have cast off that goes up almost vertical and it's coming down.
Yeah.
And in an arc. And at the time of the assault, those covers may not be that close to the floor. They could be pulled up onto the bed itself. They don't have to be in that final position, although they do look pretty square.
So this would be indicating of what you mentioned, like the shake, because if he was standing here where he shook his knife, I mean, that would leave this. There's a good possibility that would leave that. Interesting. I didn't notice this until, because I was like, this stuff, maybe it was coughed up. I mean, it's a big distance, but it's still possible.
That up at the, I've got a dirty screen on my computer. Up at the top edge of the bed, where it first crossover, going down through it, is there anything significant about? It looks like there's some droplets there.
Yeah, quite a few.
And, so that can be, and they look rather small, so that's from some type of being forced. And these surfaces, it's not a hard surface, so blood droplets on clothing doesn't act in the same that you'll have with hard surfaces such as walls and things. That the clothing will not give you real good angles on it and stuff.
Yeah. Now, this here, like one of the things that I noticed is this cup is over. This kind of got a liquid that's coming this way. You have cups on the floor. One of the logs, we haven't seen all of the photos that were released, but one of the logs indicated that there was blood on the beer pong table here itself. I don't see any on this aspect. I'm assuming that they came this way and he may have rubbed against this side of it and hit it. And this is why all these bottles are
well, if those glasses were semi-full before being knocked over, you could test and see which way, because of the whatever the balance or whatever the volume of the glass would have. And we have two glasses facing the same direction. Yeah. But you could run some tests and see which direction that table was hit from, that would tilt them one way or the other.
Yeah, I think this one's just there's nothing there. Not much here. This is more of the those drops that we were talking about earlier. Mm-hmm. So down here is this plastic or glass stuff here.
That debris field. I found that extremely interesting also. Not only that, but the finish on this floor is highly polished. that if you back away from it and look over there towards the door, you see that high shine that with proper oblique lighting, you could probably almost see shoe prints in coming and going, especially if there's any contamination of blood on highly polished surfaces. We used to do that a lot because offenders coming from the outside, just like if I've done many times with Mrs. Steve, that she'll mop the floors and I come in and you can track me through the house every step I took. And when you come from a area that has any dirt, grime, or your feet are wet from those elements. And I don't know what type of processing law enforcement did, but I would be surprised if they didn't find some type of shoe patterns on that flooring.
It kind of looks like it. It looks like something there and there, like where you would expect, a foot to be, but it's kind of going this way. It should be probably more that way.
Back on your broken glass, ceramic, whatever it is over there, that debris field, if this occurred during any of the fights or any encounter or whatever occurred, or as long as it's not due to some law enforcement officer dropping something, but if that debris field of those broken particles existed at the time of him exiting or even entry. I mean, it could be something that got knocked over by one of the victims earlier in the day and they just hadn't cleaned it up yet. You have trace evidence there that is one of those dream things, just like the hairs of the victim and the hairs of Murphy, and that you'll have that trace evidence value that you're looking for as a CSI, that in the shoes and that anyone that walked through that debris field, they're going to pick up that trace evidence. And then if they go to the car and through the manipulation of brakes and gas and floor mats, that you're going to have that transfer. And so that's things that in the CSI world we look for. And we have to determine did that debris field exist and was it there during the exit of the offender of Kohberger through those doors? Because you would expect to find some of those that trace evidence in his shoe wear.
So based on the information that we know, none of this was found. If he had on booties and changed his clothes, changed his shoes before he entered the car, where do you think he must have done that at? Do you think he did that right outside of the vehicle?
I would expect so. Just speculating, of course, or the fact that he's in a crime scene and criminals separate themselves. There's an internal clock that you'll see with criminals and things that they taught us about during our training, that while criminals, only thing they have in their favor is if they control all the elements of a crime and they control all the victims. It's when they start losing control and they don't have absolute control of everybody that this clock kicks in. They have to separate themselves from that crime scene for the fact they don't know what's been heard. The plan is not plan A anymore. Everything fell apart. I've got more victims than I anticipated, or I've been here too long and I've got to separate. Now, he may have a plan that he was going to always change clothes, but he's fast tracked, and because he may have 2 extra victims he wasn't counting on, and he knows that's not plan A. But I expect that regardless, he was going to change prior to entering his vehicle somewhere along the path to the vehicle.
Do you think he had that he changed twice? Do you think he arrived or drove around in his car where his DNA is present everywhere in the jumpsuit? Sure. Or do you think he changed outside and then changed again outside, once exiting and then once entering the vehicle, or before?
Generally what occurs, and this is the thing that we call a bank robber up there where I worked at, due to what is it's easiest way to explain it is criminals have when they are in the planning and staging a crime, They can leave the residence dressed in one set of clothing. They'll go to a safe area, be it a house or a remote area, and they'll change clothing. And they'll go commit the crime. Then they go back to that same safe area, house, parking lot, remote area, and dress back into their other clothing, so that they have this. And actually, that what led to a bank robber is that we saw, we had one of the officers says, "Oh, I saw that individual 20 minutes before the bank robbery coming out of a remote wooded area." We went back to the remote wooded area, and there was his motorcycle, and there was the bank bag with all the money in it. That he went back to that safe ground to change clothes. He had went there prior to the crime, and he had went there post to the crime. And so criminals do that, and I would expect with the lack of evidence in the vehicle that Kohberger had stuck to a certain plan.
Yeah, I think so too. You know, I mean, he did a lot of planning, and the planning don't stop at the murders. The planning is also opposed, you know, after getting away with it, you know, doing something with his vehicle. You know, one of the things that we note that I noticed in the documents was that he had purchased a couple of series of items in June of 2022. And amongst these items was a spare tire for his vehicle, an inflator, like an air pump, and some other various items. They went to his vehicle and they were able to find all of those items except for the spare tire and the inflator. Now, he had a spare tire in there, but the spare tire was had a part number for Parts Geek and was purchased some other time. It appeared to be brand new according to the documents. So sometime within 6 months from June, when he purchases the spare tire, to the time he's arrested in December, he now has a different spare tire. So to me, I thought about this for a while. You know, I was like, does that mean that he didn't Dexter out his trunk, you know, and he made a mistake? Does that mean that he didn't intend on maybe perhaps committing, you know, the act of murder in the house initially? Maybe his plans were to abduct somebody and then do that somewhere else, and that's why he didn't Dexter out his trunk. You know, I think the most logical thing is, I think he realized that if he Dextered out and taped everything up, if he had a flat tire, he'd be kind of screwed. And so I think he Dextered everything up except for leaving a spare tire out and the inflator in case he came across a situation and that he didn't have to undexter stuff to get his spare out. What do you think? Do you have any other thoughts about it? Do you think that maybe that's possible? What are your thoughts on the 2 spare tires within 6 months?
Yeah, and then that could be the failure of his plan that, oh, okay, I'm gonna bag everything up, throw it in the trunk, and did it cross contaminate that one item? And he had to replace it. And I don't know what his finances were, but there has people in human nature is you don't do things you don't have to do. And if he got rid of a brand new spare and it's not on the vehicle, and he didn't have a flat somewhere, and it changed it out, and he had to buy another one, then of course, you know, he did. There's a reason he did that. And is it more than likely it's due to some type of cross contamination?
That's what I'm thinking too. You know, Dylan says that according to documents, Dylan says that she sees Bryan Kohberger walking out with some sort of container. She puts her hands like this, like walking out like that, and that there was some sort of attachment sticking out of it, like an arrow. I can only assume it was a knife. You know, I thought obviously he put that in his trunk and maybe some cross contamination, 100%.
I wonder, was there anything missing from the house that he took some type of token or collective of that?
It doesn't seem like they have found it, if that is the case. Now, they did find a shovel in his trunk, and in the shovel they found some soil that was consistent with soil from the Moscow area. There was another little clue to it because they took some testing on the pollen that was engraved in the soil. Most of it came from pine, but there was some, I think it's like maple and burwood or something like that. And those are not common to the area, but are commonly planted. So that leads me to believe that he dug something up in that area and hid it. Now we know that, a lot of people assume maybe it's the knife, maybe it's not. Some people say, hey, there was some video of Bryan Kohberger out there in Clarkson, Washington. There's a Snake River out there. The soil out there is not the same as it is in Moscow. One of the reasons why the soil is, I guess, unique out in that area, in the Palouse area, is because there's a lot of high winds and stuff. As soon as you get within like 10 miles east and so many miles south, it begins to change. So it's from that general area. So to me, I was like, well, we know he turns off his phone, and when his phone comes back on, there's like 28 minutes that pass by, but he's only traveled about 9 miles. So it's obviously he did something out there in the middle of nowhere. The very next day, or a little bit later on that day, for 3 hours, he turns his phone off back in that same area about Johnson, Washington. So my assumption is he went back out there, got it, then probably moved whatever it was he took out of his, whatever he hid.
All right. Now, just spitballing here for a moment.
Okay.
Now knowing he has a shovel, and but say that we were talking about safe ground. What if he went into a wooded area and dug a hole out, and had his spare tire, which has that well within it, and created a hole prior to the crime, and so that he would be able to go back and instantly bury, and just he had almost like it's a cover to a manhole. He's using that tire well that is sitting there, and that way he can go instantly to the area within 3 or 4 minutes, pull the tire, flip it up, throw the stuff up under it, drop it back down, cover it with leaves, and leave.
See, that's plausible, and I was going to get to this, and I apologize I didn't. The description of the shovel is it's plastic.
It's what?
It's plastic.
Oh, okay then.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be digging up a large amount of things. Now, I don't understand what's plastic. Is it the whole thing is plastic? Is it a fiberglass shovel that feels plastic with a plastic handle, but the actual part of it is steel? It talks about the soil being in there wedged. So it doesn't sound like it's one of those little plastic ones that you have for the gardening, because those don't have edges to be wedged in. If mud got in there, I think the description would have been caked. So I'm kind of confused about the type of shovel, but the shovel was used to dig somewhere in Moscow. Now, could it be strong enough? And I mean, it was small enough also to fit in his trunk. So that's the other thing too. So I looked at a couple of examples of some plastic shovels, and I found a few that were the plastic handle with a fiberglass pole that were probably about 2.5 feet long, used for camping. And I was like, all right, man, this definitely could be it, because apparently he bought some camping things. And so I don't know how big of a hole he could dig with that, and I know a lot of people think that maybe he threw the knife in the Snake River. However, if he left the items out there in the middle of the night, he didn't go back until 5:30 after he had left the area around Snake River and Clarkson. So he may not have had the knife on him. Maybe that's the one thing he kept. But the other thing too is perhaps maybe he did keep some tokens, and he did bury these tokens somewhere. And these tokens are small enough that you can bury with a plastic shovel. So to answer your question, if he stole anything or took anything, I don't know. However, they also found these IDs in his glove box. They were from his past. One of them, I believe, was somebody that he went to high school with, and the other one was a school security guard that he worked with. And both of those had been for some time that he had kept those in his box inside of a glove. And so apparently those two women were made contact with. They have no idea why he would have had them or those type of things. But I do think it's very plausible that he kept something.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They don't know why he kept them, but he knew why he kept them.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I don't think law enforcement know either what Bryan Kohberger may have taken from the house. But I assure you, he obviously does. And if he buried it somewhere, he would have known. But yeah, if he didn't bury it and that shovel was too small to dig up a hole, that's another thing he has to get rid of, is that spare tire. That's a large item.
That's what I'm saying. If he went out and pre-dug something and then used that tire as a cap so that it would be large enough to cover everything. But with the river being there, why would you even do that? Humans are pretty lazy. They'll unless he has to go back and relive it and handle those items from the crime scene, which there are certain offenders that do that. They relive the scene over and over by handling different articles that either they take from the scene or they used at the scene. So, I just, whoever eventually analyzes this psycho will draw us some pretty interesting conclusions about his behavior, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. Real quick, we got a couple of super chats, things we have. Miss Dog Lover coming in saying, we had so many security scares at my university, people trying to break in during the middle of the night. Lock all the doors and windows and make sure you tell the taxi drivers there are people in the house. 100%. 100%. I want to thank GSUPM for gifting 5 Drunk Turkey Show memberships. Ted Bundy comes in a couple of times with $4.99. And then we have Paul saying, if an artery had been cut open 5.5 meters travel, that's bigger than the room. It would be everywhere, I think, placed there. A lot of people are questioning the lack of, I guess, blood everywhere. I think we saw in Xana's room, at least. I mean, it seems like there was quite a bit on the floor and smeared around. And even in Maddie's room, in that one corner of the bed, it seemed like it was prevalent all over the bed. But are you surprised that there isn't more on the walls?
Well, I mean, I don't have a full picture of the house yet. I mean,
True.
We only have one wall. We have very select images. I think they said that they were going to drop like 200 pictures. How many pictures have you seen yourself of the residence
that have been released? I think there's about 12.
Okay. And so there may be, I mean, we're only looking at part of a door. We're looking at part of a floor. We're looking at part of a wall in these pictures. And this, we don't have the full value of everything that could have been the target. These surfaces, certain walls, certain articles within the properties may be, whereas we have all that, because we do have some blood pools that are pretty excessive in one or two spots. Yeah. And for those injuries and that blood flow to occur to create that blood pool has to be significant, those injuries.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. And Ted Bundy comes in again with $4.99 and $1.99 also says F. Kohberger. Yes, sir. I don't think I'd ever agree with Ted Bundy on anything before. But, so I know there's been a little bit of a debate on these. A lot of people don't think these are Bryan Kohberger's hands. They seem kind of small. Do you think, what do you think about these handprints on the window?
Well, looking at the window and seeing those, whatever discoloration, that if these are void prints that created by someone touching the surfaces with either a glove or a hand, I looked at the other window that's above this kitchen sink. That's in that kitchen view where the broken glass is.
Yeah.
If you look at it closely, you'll see that it also has, whereas it appears quite dirty and it has a lot of this speckling effect. Under the left hand here, you almost see like a drag mark down through there, but also towards the right there. You see those? Go to the right. Go up to the palm. See that? Yes, see that? It's almost like there's a swipe downward there pattern also. And the palm is cut off really strange right there at the back of the palm. It's almost straight at the bottom, at the back, right there, almost like it's a cuff sleeve or something. That it's not compressed like the human skin would be. That if you, because the more pressure applied, your skin is very flexible and it'll create a moon shape, and it's not that's straight across us. So it's odd, and like I said, we don't know who and how long they've been there. Was it from someone looking in the window in the past? Could be. Don't know.
Yeah. Now, I mean, obviously, we have no idea whose it is. Bryan Kohberger was there 23 times, apparently. So maybe at one other time he.
But when looking at that window, if you look at the bottom part of the window along the ledge, you don't see any type of fingerprint powder collected there. You don't see any pry marks where someone broke that. See the mold, the dirt line there?
Yeah.
And you don't see where anybody's pried on anything trying to lift the window. And those are things that we would look for. And we, of course, also check at the upper part of the window, wherever the locking mechanism is, to see if there's anyone that may have pried on it, worked on it, trying to gain access, not only touching the window, but trying to press up.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. You know, when I had looked at it, I had said I thought that this person was wearing some long sleeves, and this cuff thing here makes a lot of sense. Patrick Laird comes in with the newest membership. Thank you, Patrick. Appreciate you, my man. Ted Bundy says Kohberger has a face only a mother could love. Probably. It seems like that was the only woman that did love him. Let's see. This is one of the bedrooms. Not sure which one. What do you think about this blood splatter here?
Yeah, it's almost round. It's like if you were swinging your hand towards it. If the door was open at the time, it could be cast off from the sometime during the struggle. If it's from him entering the room and walking towards it, you would expect to see other droplets either on the floor or streaming up to it. Just having a single drop there is odd.
Yeah, it is. I think, I don't know, that's too faint. Yeah, it is an odd just one there. And again, I think that may be this one.
No, I think there's more than one there.
Yeah, I thought there was more than one here too. Let me see. There's that. That's just a door. No, this is further down. If this is, then the one dot that we see is the one way up here. Could this be Kaylee's room if he's opening that door and if something touched?
I mean, I don't know.
I
didn't see it on her door below the knob.
Yeah.
And we don't, on the panel, we're not near the bottom of the panel. It appears where we're at least a third, if not a halfway up that panel, because you can see the bottom corner of the panel at the bottom.
Yeah, right here.
Mm-hmm.
That one's weird. It would have been.
I mean, it could be on down far. Go a little bit right in there or something. See if you see a droplet in there. I don't know. It could be. There could be one here, but I can't tell. Even at that's a little high. I think it'd be right around here. Yeah. Yeah, there's.
Now that's this one for sure. With the door open. You have two little ones, and you have those.
You got direction on those. You got the little satellite. That some force energy was generated, and is it cast off? Yes, it is. It's projected there from either a hand or from a weapon.
And so you believe that this door was left open during the attack?
I would believe so. For that blood droplet to get there in the corner with that angle, yes, it had. It's not. There's no way that blood droplet could be formed in that manner, because there's nothing to the left of there that will allow that angle to occur if the door's closed.
That's true. That is true. This is the door. I guess I don't know if this is the amount of the door that he left it open. He may have, law enforcement may have opened it further or not, but this is, I think some are speculating that this may be the path that he took. It looks like he went directly straight. I mean, you have one foot facing that way, one foot facing this way, and from the angle from the drone footage, it looks very mechanical. The movements. Is that what you would expect from somebody like Bryan Kohberger? Do you think somebody mechanical? I mean, all his movements have been pretty rigid.
Yeah, we would, of course, you would measure and document. I mean, all we have is overall pictures. We don't have the subsequent processing pictures of what you would see with the blood drops and with scale and the collection. And I mean, you know, for every picture you showed, there's probably going to be 3 or 4 or 5 more pictures in addition to those, because they photographed those spots for a reason. Each of these pictures were taken for a reason, to document something. And then you'll have additional pictures showing what the next step was taken to either collecting those blood droplets for with swabs, and or collecting the glass in the floor, and because there's a process to it.
Now this one, we don't know which room it was in, don't know the pattern, or I mean, I'm assuming this is laid out on its side. It looks like there's some sort of drop here. You have this. Is this from like passing by it, like maybe his leg? I'm assuming that he climbed on the bed, on the mattress there, where Kaylee and Maddie slept to commit the crimes. I would assume that he'd have some blood on his legs.
Is that the table leg, and it's just angled 90 degrees off?
Correct. It's laying down.
Okay. It could be that, or it could be one of the victims that was on the floor, and you know, or it could be the offender that had to get up off the floor. I don't know it, but it's someone that was saturated with blood. If that's from a hand transfer, which it could be, and I mean, you know, like I said, we're just seeing one picture. We're not seeing the 4 or 5 pictures that go with each one of these of how that was processed.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. We're only getting a brief picture here. Horrific crime scene. You know, there's only so much you can see in these pictures. There's only been so many that have been dropped. You know, that's going to be the gist of them. There, Steve, of all the pictures that we have so far.
Well, I'm pretty sure that with what's released, and even with that, you know, you have to sanitize, you know, these pictures to the point that, and how do you do this and still respect the families as much as you can to getting the story out there, and remembering the victims, and you know, what was taken from us and from them, from those families. It's absolutely, and it's a very fine edge that everyone walks, from the ones that have all these in pictures, and they did the FOIA to get these pictures. What's the final, what are they going to do with them, and how are they going to bring it to the attention of the world? You know, it's a hard question for a lot of people to look at themselves and ask, you know, how far do you carry this stuff?
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. It's this is so heartbreaking. You know, even you know, we with what we're seeing, it's minimal compared to what those officers saw. You know, and what we probably can attest to the nature and the gravity of the crime scene from these small amount of pictures. It's insane. Now,
the officers, you know, they're trained for that. By the time that they're working these scenes, they're pretty battle hardened. Some of the first responders that first got there, that's part of their future training where they'll move on in their careers, because in law enforcement, you have to be hardened to that, because you got a job to do, and you have to do that job, and you can't be emotional, and you just have to do follow your protocols and your training to make sure that you're successful in getting people like Kohberger off the street. And they did a fantastic job as far as the investigation and the fast track, because you look at how many homicides that sometimes are years before an arrest is made, and we were right just a few months.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. This one was like just 7 weeks, and he ended up getting arrested. You know, a couple last questions I have for you. He was apparently studying Danny Rawlings, somebody that he was looking up. There was the Cellbrite and expert that came out recently and talked about some of the things that he was looking at. Danny Rawlings is a guy that I think he used like vinegar to try to destroy evidence in DNA. Do you think that Bryan Kohberger used a similar tactic, given the fact that they didn't find anything on the bodies or anything else?
There's of course, with the internet, you can look out there and see how to clean and sanitize vehicles and what will destroy DNA. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of different ways of sanitizing the vehicle that will allow offenders to clean up after themselves, because they have to cloud the issue and separate themselves from those victims. And making your vehicle sterile is, as we see that happen in this case, it still surprises me that more wasn't found with all the technologies that are out there now.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're absolutely right. You know, the last question I have references, let me pull up the image. And this one's probably not the best one. A lot of people have done a few things with this image. This was taken just shortly after the murders, a few hours afterwards. You know, it doesn't look like he's scratched up or anything, but one of the things that I noticed is that his hair just looks kind of off. You know, it's red. You know, his arrest picture, it's like a dirty blonde. And now if you look at it, it's gotten darker again, like more of a dark brown. I had wondered if maybe he put some sort of chemical or gel in his hair to prevent it from falling out, even though he put a mask on over it, puts the gel, puts the mask on, prevents the hair from falling out. But I'd wonder, maybe he used some sort of, like, I think they call it lightning gel, which would have the effect of changing your brown hair to reddish, but it'll also damage your hair. Would that be an effective way to destroy DNA? You know, because this guy's a hairy dude and not one hair fell off of him.
Well, yeah, from my understanding of what the witness saw, about the only hair that would have been exposed would have been his eyebrows. Mm-hmm. And, nose hair would have been about it, because everything else is pretty well covered. But yeah, I mean, he could have just everything from doubling, tripling up on hairspray to gelling his hair down. Of course, any of those could have worked.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I was wondering more in particular with like the gel that has the peroxide in it. Can you damage your hair in case of a hair that falls out that it cannot be traced back to him?
I don't know about the root now. I don't think, because that, you know, the only way to make sure that you don't have that DNA is that you prepare yourself for not to lose and have that transfer occur, which I'm surprised that there wasn't any hair found at the residence. And they may have, they just haven't separated it from all the evidence. Because I'm sure he left stuff at that crime scene from either his vehicle or from his person or his residence in that home. I mean, it's impossible that he didn't, but just because he left it doesn't mean it will ever be identified. It's so hard to find some of that fiber evidence of hair, you know, because you're looking at an environment that people lived in, and they had visitors, and there's thousands and hundreds of hair and DNA, you know, that could be collected from different parts. It's not easy doing what CSI does.
No, it's not. And you know, he was
able
to
TV thing where they go in instantly and pull it out in 5 minutes.
Yeah,
Although they did with the knife sheath, that was pretty impressive.
that was impressive. The speed that they got to it. The last thing I wanted to ask you is he turned off his phone 4 times. And not only did he turn off his phone, apparently he turned off Wi-Fi and dislocated location services and then powered off his phone. So that way he was completely dark. Apparently that is, if you turn off your phone, you can still somehow maintain contact with certain things around you, Wi-Fi, things like that, unless you shut those things off. And he did that. We know 2 of the times that he turned his phone off was one during the murders. The other time was a few hours later after he leaves Clarkson, Washington, and is in the Idaho, Washington area. He turns his phone off for 3 hours. I speculate the other 2 times were times that he was doing practice runs. I know that there was one time about 2 weeks before the murders, according to court documents, Kaylee and the roommates came home to the back sliding glass door open, Murphy missing, meaning that somebody went into the house and also opened Kaylee's door for Murphy to run out if they didn't leave him loose throughout the house, which I doubt. That'd be very rude and disrespectful, and I don't think that's the case. To leave a puppy just running around into everybody's room. It sounded like, according to the documents, that when Kaylee wasn't there, Murphy was left in her room. And so I think there was at least one other practice run. Do you think he tried to go out there beforehand to commit the crime? And the last question I have for you also afterwards is, do you think if he didn't get caught, he would have done it again?
Yes. Yes. There's no remorse on this individual. He's highly organized. He took steps all along the pathway to commit these crimes. He did, even after committing these 4 horrific crimes, he went through the process of cleaning everything up and then going about his life as if nothing occurred. This individual is an animal. He's not human. And so he absolutely able to go into society after committing these crimes tells you a lot about what he's capable of in the future.
That's true. One telling thing that I tell everybody is that he apparently, and this was just recently found out, he was searching paranoia and paranoid things, and he was searching up some other stuff, and he got pulled over twice in Indiana by the police. And during his interrogation, he mentions another moment while he was traveling with his father in another state that law enforcement had turned their lights on behind him, pulled up behind him, and then left, and he thought it was weird. And so he was under the impression, I think, that they were on to him. And he was under that impression that they were on to him, and he was paranoid about it. I don't think it's a coincidence that was also around the time he stopped searching for K-bar knives. Up until that point, up until the point where the bolo comes out and he travels across country, he'd been searching for K-bar knives quite a bit. I strongly suspect that's because he was going to commit the crime again. Once they got onto him, he stopped searching. I don't know about that. Or at least that's once he thinks they're onto him, he stops doing the searches. It also tells me that the knife was either broken during the interaction or it was inaccessible, or he isn't.
Well, I mean, he was wanting to replace the K-bar.
Yeah. Well, and, I mean, if he thought they
were like, he replaced the tire. He replaced that tire for a reason. I don't know what the reason is. There's a reason for the shovel, and there's a reason for replacing the tire.
That is very true. That is very true. And I would assume that if that shovel was in the in the trunk when they found it during his arrest, we got to think about it. And he replaced the trunk. I mean, the spare. And if he replaced it due to some sort of contamination, that probably leads me to believe that shovel wasn't there in the trunk the night of. Maybe that's what he bought in Clarkson, Washington. Could be. But thank you, Steve. Thank you for everything, for joining us. On Wednesday, I'm having Barbara on. We're going to talk about the Timothy D case. I want to thank you so much for all the information and everything you've done in that case to bring it to light. As we break down that case, I want to bring you back on to kind of explain some of the evidence that you have discovered in that case.
Sure. I appreciate you doing that. Timmy was a case that we looked at for a long time. We were able to develop some new evidence and give it to DA and law enforcement, and still waiting for what are they going to do.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we can apply a little bit of pressure and make them do something. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you guys want to know a little bit more about that case, we're going to talk about it on Wednesday. Yeah, we're going to talk about it on Wednesday the 13th. I'm going to have Barbara Hall, Timothy D's mother. This case screams something's up. Something's up in it. You guys, law enforcement don't want to look into it. There's a lot of evidence that at least should bring up an interview at the very minimum, and yet it's just not happening. You guys don't want to miss it. It's going to be on Wednesday night. Like, comment, subscribe. Go check out Steve's page. It's called True Crime Web. Do you have anything planned coming up? I know I haven't seen anything in a while. Are you getting back into it?
Yes, it's just that last year I traveled close to 60,000 miles working cold cases across the country.
Yes, sir.
And this year I've been on about 3 or 4 trips this year. Probably haven't went about 10, maybe 10,000 miles this year. But I'm too old to travel those 60,000 miles. or everything I did last year. But yeah, I'm just trying to close up some of the cases. I've done more consulting this year on some cold cases for families, and of course assisted some families in some searches and things behind the scenes, and been doing that stuff through our foundation, and probably do that more. But yeah, I've got to get back into my YouTube, recreating and explaining how certain crime scenes are processed and the characteristics of and the processes law enforcement uses to develop evidence. I've got to get back into that.
There you go, Will. Let me know when you have something planned. I'll share it on my platform to let everybody know to go watch. Thank you so much again, Steve, for coming on. You've been a blessing and an amazing person with everything that you do. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Yes, sir. All righty, guys. I'll see you guys on Wednesday. Like, comment, subscribe. You guys know what to do. Peace.